Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate prose. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics. In association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it.
All right, here we go. Our first session of Saturday morning, third jam-packed day here at World Congress 13 in Dublin and Maynooth, just outside of Dublin, joined by Gemma Parry and David Hartley, who presented on a growing issue. That's a question, as well as a statement. Understanding adolescent development for injury prevention, practical applications. First off, thank you for taking some time. A little bit of an early morning, potentially, busy day. So for carving in the time, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to throw it over to you. Where did the interest start? Gemma, we'll start with you, and then David, go back and forth here.
So I think my interest around sort of adolescent development was very much a happy accident. I have always been quite curious. I've had the privilege of working at quite high levels, the elite end of sport. And I think some of the problems and things that we were seeing, when I track it back, so much could be resolved if we just got those teenage development years right. I also think there's a really interesting interplay between how we prioritize performance, participation, and personal development. And I think those three things regularly come out at odds, and it's our jobs and our roles as practitioners to help young people navigate the prioritization of that. So I think for me, it was just a curiosity as to why children are either burning out, dropping out, and stopping being physically active throughout their life course, or whether we're promoting those injuries or what we are doing as effective as we think it is. So I think that's where my interest really grew.
Yeah, I think mine kind of started coming out of university, and my first role was in a football club. I think that was always my aspiration, was to work in soccer. And the natural route at the start of a career is always through an academy.
Yeah.
And you kind of work your way up. Mm-hmm. But I don't think university necessarily prepares you for the unique challenges of working with youth athletes. And I think finding myself in that position and not really knowing what I should be doing with these kids really sparked my interest in terms of, right, what do I need to do to give them everything that they need in these really sensitive periods of development. And that's kind of where the interest grew, really. And thought, actually, you know what, I really enjoy doing this and the challenges that this brings. And then seeing these kids develop and excel and have success, and knowing you've played a small part in that was probably the biggest reward that I see in my career.
Okay. And where are you right now, and where are you working? Obviously adolescent and development. What spaces are you currently in beyond an international leader in presenting your materials to everybody that's here?
I think mine's probably more difficult to answer because I've kind of sat everywhere. So I find it quite difficult to describe what I do when people ask me. So I'm dual qualified. So I have sports rehabilitation, so like the AT background, but also I'm qualified as a physio. Mm-hmm. So I sit in a couple of spaces anyway, but I also have the benefits of being a clinician for nearly 20 years and having a PhD, so having that body of research, but I've also taught and lectured in universities. So I've been in lots of different spaces. So right now I've just finished a really big project, which was a postdoc piece of work around supporting teachers and educators in schools so they can deliver physical education, PE, and just really support and understand these developments. They can help children at a really pivotal time. So that's kind of where I am at the moment.
Yeah, so I'm very much in the applied side. So my background's in sports rehabilitation or athletic training. And I'm obviously in sports science and medicine provision at Celtic Football Club for kind of boys and girls from 10 up to 19, and
Okay.
kind of it's more of like a coordination role now with a little bit of delivery, but it's seen as such a wide variety of different ages, populations, and challenges along the way.
Right. Let's spin it this way. I think like when we see professional sports, they're adults, and sometimes we forget that they were children at one point, or they were adolescents at one point. That's a critical piece, right? Like the development, the foundation.
Sure.
Some of them have over specialization and they make it. Some of them played multiple sports, had a really great foundational background. There's a bit of hit and miss there, maybe. I don't know, through your captures. Some have been very talented and identified early, others are late bloomers. So how do we address that, or how do you address that in your space? Like wherever you want to go, not specifically, but just sort of a general take on that.
Yeah, I think there's a few questions and debates in that question itself, but yeah, I think in terms of that early bloomer and kind of late developer and how you manage that, because every kid develops differently. So a 13-year-old is not necessarily biologically 13, they might be 15, they might be 11. And it's how do you cater for those needs, because physically they're very, very different. And that's a big challenge we've got, certainly in the structure of our sport. And it's identifying those ones who, are they physically excellent, or are they just biologically older? And how do we identify the ones that maybe need a little bit more time and development, and how much can we potentially just challenge the early developers in a slightly different way so they can all reach their potential at some point. It doesn't all need to be at the same time, and making that environment right for them.
Yeah, and I think what I've seen, I've spent quite a lot of time being a clinician. I'm now trying to spend that time on educating and supporting everybody that sits around the system of a child. And I think it's really interesting that children exist in a world that we as adults build for them. And if we as adults just keep building worlds and systems that support adult ideals, we're not meeting them where they're at all. And I think what's really interesting around what you were saying, the early developers and specialization and multisport, multisport just becomes multiple specialisms, right? Because we get very restricted, structured coaching. We get restricted, structured training. We get structured everything. So children are scheduled within an inch of their lives in terms of the number of activities they're doing, but the offering that we give them as adults is their play, is their creativity, are we acknowledging the voice of the child? And I think that's where the misbalance comes. So my parents or coaches go, yeah, my kid's a multi-sport athlete. Well, they're just doing 4 different sports in the same environments. So, you know, is specialization as bad as maybe we think it is, when multi-sports is just multiple specialization offerings at the same time? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's,
I think that comes from education, actually, and understanding that maybe what you're seeing isn't necessarily somebody who's hugely gifted and talented. That's just somebody who's capitalizing on their biological lottery early. So when everybody else catches it and people go, oh, they were so promising and they didn't make it, like what happened? Well, we didn't create a great environment for them to flourish and function in the first place, right?
Yeah, this is a brilliant capture. We see it in the North American side at hockey world, whatever it is, baseball, American football, whatever that is, but professionalizing, maybe not a word, but almost professionalizing childhood, right? It becomes a job far too early. What are the downfalls of that you've witnessed, or that you're privy to through your research or clinical or applicable pieces?
Yeah, I think when you kind of specialize in it early, I think you've seen so many overuse injuries in children 100%. Now, which kind of maybe a generation ago you wouldn't have seen. I think it is literally that scheduling to within an inch of their life, and they're doing the same movement patterns, the same drills over and over again. All these overuse injuries is a symptom of that, and we're not necessarily recognizing that early enough to intervene.
And I think that comes back to fundamental initial training, and it's certainly something I've found that's not just in physiotherapy or athletic training or medicine or teaching, but we're not taught that context of what adolescence is at that point. So when you go out to be a practitioner, you know, it's not just happening in a health lens, it's happening through that educational lens, parental lens. I think people don't really know where to go. Last year, I saw clinically my first stress fracture in a 10-year-old. 10.
Yeah.
Like, that is completely avoidable. And that's not that child's fault. That's, again, that lack of adult understanding around where we're going with them.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, it's James Gardner here, host of Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast, the official podcast of the World Federation of Athletic Training and Therapy. We are excited to announce the next International Athletic Training and Therapy Day on February 12th, 2026. IATTD 26. This year's theme is Elevating Health Worldwide. We're calling on all athletic trainers, athletic therapists, and sport rehabilitators across the world to join us in celebrating our shared profession on a global scale. During IATTD 26, we'd love to hear from individuals, organizations, associations, societies, academic programs, and more about the impact of our colleagues in elevating health for their patients, clients, and communities. There are a number of ways you can participate via social media and in your communities. Share stories. Tell us about a day in your life as an athletic therapist, athletic trainer, or sport rehabilitator. Give a shout out to an athletic trainer, athletic therapist, or sport rehabilitator who's positively impacted you as a professional or you as an athlete. Ask athletes and patients to share their thoughts on the value of ATs and sport rehabilitators in their lives. Create a fun video to highlight you in your setting or community. When you post to social media, be sure to use the hashtag IATTD26 and tag us.
Overuse injuries, I mean, most practitioners potentially, that's physical. What about the social, the psychological pieces? Do you see that in your practice? Do you utilize other professionals, referral systems? I mean, burnout is a thing that was a buzz term, maybe, but it's also a very real thing in our space. We're seeing kids that start and they're pushed and they skate a lot, or whatever they're doing, they do a lot of it. And by the time we see them at 14, 15, it's now like, where's the fun in this? What do you do outside of your sport to sort of be a human as opposed to the athlete human? I mean, wherever you want to take that.
I think that becomes their identity.
Yeah.
Like they are a soccer player or they are a hockey player. And I think if they don't make it or they can lose that enjoyment and the love for the sport, what are they? That makes sense. Like what is their identity at that point? I think that's really difficult to overcome. I think we've got our club. We've got a really great support network. We can refer out if we need to. We've got a really good in-house kind of wellbeing team, so we can kind of lean on people. So it's a really good kind of multidisciplinary support network we've got for those kids. But ultimately, if they're not there anymore, what do we do, or what do they do rather? I think it's a real challenge within any kind of youth sport really, at that level.
Yeah, and I think again, so where I try to approach this from an educational perspective, drawing on all those aspects as a clinician and working across different sports, is you're not just dealing with a physical entity. There's 4 parts of childhood now where you've got your physical changes, so your skeletal or your muscular growth. Those are really easy to see. So that's what we tend to focus on. Yeah. Probably as practitioners, it's what our KPIs are linked to. So again, we prioritize that more. You've got your biological changes that are occurring. You've got your psychological changes. So the brain is developing as well. That limbic system, that frontal lobe, that ability to risk assess, decision make. And I think just talking through people what that journey of development is as well, because they all link. It's not just a separate thing. It all works together. And then trying to help certainly coaches and parents understand the psychosocial changes. So as children come through adolescence, and I don't know if you're a parent yourself, but so many parents say to me, I don't recognize my son or daughter anymore. It's all about their friends. They're prioritizing that peer group support, again, just because of how the brain is changing. And I think if you can speak to coaches and parents and teachers and practitioners and go, this is like a normal development journey. If you're aware of it, you can then start being able to do something about it because it's coming. And for me, people tend to know that the physical growth spurt's happening. They don't know about any of the other stuff that makes that whole child. We talk about biopsychosocial care, right? But how often do we put in our assessments or are we tracking that? Or do we make it a priority as a KPI?
Yeah, no, great points. And I mean, I don't mean to make this solely negative about a singular identity or sport identity. I think I'll throw it to you, but the positives of that as well. What does sport bring? What does, high level sport at an early age? It does provide some growth in those other areas beyond physical as well. Is that a fair capture? In the right environment, I suppose, with the right system, as you mentioned, sort of in support of a child.
Yeah, I mean, I think they get a lot of experiences they won't get otherwise.
Yeah.
Like So, for example, we've got kids that have maybe been on the plane for the first time and gone to see a different country and different people, and they would never get that in ordinary childhood. So they definitely, harnessed right, it's an amazing experience, whether or not they go and play professionally when they're older. If we get it right, they can look back on the experience in that program and go, wow, look at all these people that I met, these things that I did, and these things that I've seen. Kids would love to do that, and they're doing it when they won't be able to, otherwise maybe not have the resources to go and do that otherwise. I think that's really powerful, and it certainly from a personal development point of view probably shapes their whole outlook on life, which is really powerful.
Yeah, and I think some of the Youth Olympics events that I've supported, you certainly see that with children that travel with you. This is the first time away from mom and dad, and actually, how can they step into their own? This is the first time meeting somebody who does their sport in a different language or in a different way. And I think when you get on the plane and you go out to these events, you take a child with you, and a different child comes home.
Yeah.
And that's actually, again, when you have those structured environments, you're working as guide rails to help the child support with their own development of what they want that experience to be. And it might be that you're not going out to prioritize getting a medal. It might be that you're going out to help them prioritize how they organize themselves around, can you get yourself up for breakfast? Can you make good nutritional choices? Have you interacted with people beyond your own team? I think what's really nice, maybe in an Olympic scenario that you might not get in soccer or football, you could go out to an Olympics as an individual event athlete, but you're part of a wider delegation. Mm-hmm. So actually you might be, athletics might be your sport, but you get to go out and you see gymnastics, you get to go and see what swimmers do. So actually they get to see what it's like being part of a national or an international team. And they might not get that opportunity normally.
Yeah.
I think there's some of the really nice things that I've seen as well in children that are maybe not aspiring to those high performance levels. So around exam period time, sport can become a place where it can just be another stressor, but it can also become a place where it's that real refuge away from that academic pressure and that academic identity. And there is so much pressure placed on children across all aspects of life to achieve now. You don't just want you to be the best at your sport. You have to be the best with your academic grades. You have to have all your extracurriculars and support community. And when is that opportunity to just switch off, reflect and grow? When does that happen?
Yeah, carving time in. I'll pull personally here. Last week I was having a conversation in the hockey space, and we have a young man who's 15. He's in a draft year and for major junior hockey. He's a goaltender. Last year he was tall. This year he came in and he doesn't fit through the doorways. Yeah. So he's that physical change, but that's also going to affect the psych, the social, the interactions of all of those systems working together for him. But I was speaking with his dad, and he said, the best part about this position is he's the only kid on the ice in a hockey game that has to get back up again and has to fail, and it gets seen and it gets highlighted. And so those pieces were really dramatic, I don't mean dramatic in a negative way, but valuable takeaways for him as a parent is kid A goes down the ice, shoots and misses the net, no big deal. He can go and hit the net the next time or score the next time. But if it goes in on my son, he's got to pick himself back up and get ready. He's now a failed, but he gets to repeat, and he gets to rinse, repeat, and sort of working with his son. It was a really interesting conversation to have with a parent, and then to sort of see that play out and have that angle. Do you have much interaction with parents, obviously doing education and things like that with Celtic, with Celtic? Do you have the opportunity to do that, to educate, to work within the confines of the organization?
Yeah, I think that underpins a lot of what we do in terms of we need to engage these key stakeholders, because ultimately we have them for a set amount of time. The parents are there all the time. That's their support network. So we need to educate them in terms of what's happening to their child in the context of that, so that they can support that when they're not with the club as well, and they're at home. So if we identify that they're going through this growth spurt, we need to let the parents know this is what's happening, this is why it's happening, it's normal. This is how we're going to address it, and this is how we can support it at home as well. So they're getting that same message from everyone that they trust around them. So I think that education piece is really important, not just the parents but also the coaches, so that everyone can understand where they're at from a physical, psychological standpoint. So that education kind of underpins everything that we do once we've identified where they're at.
Yeah, and again, Olympic sports, they have their friends and family scheme, which is all about taking everybody on that journey together too. And I think what I've noticed with parents that I've met is so many parents talk to me like when you have a baby, you get quite a lot of input and you get that early years development knowledge. So you go to your NCT classes in the UK and they talk to you about, you can expect your child to sit at this point, or they're going to crawl, or they're going to start speaking, and parents know milestones until about the age of 5. Beyond that, it's an absolute desert. And I think when you hit adolescence, you get even more milestones in that rate of change and the amount of change and things that are happening. But parents are, where do they go? There is no trusted source of information to just say, hey, this is fine. Like they would have hit their milestone around crawling. They're now going to hit their milestone around ignoring you in public because their friends are more important, and that's fine. So it doesn't make it any easier to deal with, but it's coming. It's nothing you did as a parent. It's nothing. And I think sadly, I can only speak from our country, maybe our governments and those support systems that would have been community-based to help parents, they're not there. The investments and the money aren't going in anymore. And I think so many parents feel quite isolated. The other thing, again, from our role that we try to do is support parents around not just, what is happening. Some parents are interested in taking a bit more of an active role at training load or something with their child and really getting into that. But also parents that they're busy. If they've got multiple children, they're trying to organise carpooling, who's got the shopping that week, who's walked the dog. Like they are invested in their children, but it's not up to parents to fully understand the training loads. We have to help them with that.
Right. Oh, great captures. So many places I want to go right now. But I want to take up your entire day. The early identifier, the physical changes that we see in my experience, maybe multiple practitioners, I hope, have a similar experience, positive, negative. The big kid, the kid who's big, who is physically stronger, develops a little bit earlier, they get identified and then they get pushed sooner. Is that a common finding for you? As we see this, and we see this again, the physical piece, and that gets pushed as early identified, looks good, moves well, really strong. So now you can do more, or you should do more. I will use baseball examples, like the kid who throws the hardest earliest is going to pitch more often than the kids who don't, if we're trying to push winning as our agenda, as opposed to what about the 4 or 5 kids that are behind him or her that are in the same phase of growth, just not there yet. I don't know, wherever you want to take that.
Yeah, I think it's more on an individual basis in terms of when you're playing, you call it playing up or playing down, which I don't like as a phrase because playing down has connotations.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few European clubs that will talk about playing across the academy, which I think is probably better terminology and framing it that way. But yeah, if you've got that early developer, you might want to let them play with older players if they've got the physical capability. It's not about winning, it's more about challenging them, because what you don't want to do is keep them at their own age group if they're being successful from a physical standpoint, because then soccer's a very skillful game, like it's a skill-based game. So if they're just relying on that physicality to succeed, that's a really temporary advantage that they've got, because everybody's going to catch up eventually.
Yeah.
So when everybody does that, if they've not developed those technical skills because they've not had to, that's probably the point where you're going to see them fall out of the game, and they're not going to reach that potential. As if you put them up against someone that's physically similar to them and they can't rely on winning because they're stronger or they're faster, they have to play football, and then you can obviously still enhance that athleticism within their program, but you're trying to make them develop those skills, or make them need to develop those skills, so that once everybody catches up and they don't have that physical advantage, they can still be technically excellent, which I think fundamentally is key to being successful in that sport in particular anyway. And like probably on the flip side, you might have someone that's a late developer, you might play them at a younger age group so that they're not having to overcome these physical challenges because they don't have the capability yet. They will do eventually, but then just go and develop technical skills without the physical challenge at a younger age group. And I think that's the hard conversation to have with players and parents, because of that connotation around playing down,
right?
Which is something we're trying to get away from. But yeah, trying to educate about, come back to education with the parents. It's like, this is why it's not a reflection of their performance or anything other than biologically, this is where we feel they're at and where they're going to develop the most, and give them that time to succeed and be patient with that development.
Yeah, and I think it comes up in the literature, and we talk a lot about sort of bio-banding games. So this is where you sort of match somebody to their sort of phase of maturation better. And essentially that is what playing up or playing down has been. It's just you're putting somebody with somebody else who's maybe in that sort of same biological phase of development.
Right.
The difficulties and the friction comes where we live in a world where everything is chronologically age decided. So I'm in this grade at school, or I'm in this year at school, which chronologically I'm just with these people, or we play in under 10s, or we play in under 14s. So because you are based on your date of birth, you come within that. Society is all set up and structured for that, and our systems and our competitions and our reward systems are all based around that. So when you bring in something like the concept of biobanding, that is sort of the connotation and where that, again, that friction occurs. But it's not a permanent solution. It doesn't replace, necessarily what we currently have. The two things don't have to be in conflict with each other. It's just a really nice way of providing an opportunity for a different kind of success.
Right. I think that captures it. This is beyond sport. This is beyond development. This is also societal, right? We're set up in a manner to either succeed or fail based on whatever preconceived notions, or culturally, or within sport, or society in general, which is maybe a 3-day talk or I don't know, a whole week. But you mentioned KPIs and like key performance indicators. I've read and flipped on that, and like KPI plus, KPI negative. So like you have indicators, but you also have inhibitors. So we have to be able to look at like key performance inhibitors. You've touched on a bunch of them that we can sort of assume and roll in there. But from a KPI plus or negative, talked about it. Physical, that's easy in a practitioner's world. What are those resources, or are there on the psych side? Like, what are we trying to identify? Are there sort of key things that you're looking for in your practice, or with Celtic trying to do from that end? Are we using happiness scales? Are we using enjoyment scales? Like, from a practitioner side who's geared probably more to the physical side, what would you advise, or is there some advice on tools that are accessible, usable from that end?
So I think we talk a lot about player readiness scores. So again, the bias is completely in the physical. How's the body feeling today? How, where is that all kind of stuff? Hydration, like where's that at? I think happiness scales are great, but there has been also some really interesting discussions around just reducing that down to one emotion. Now, what you need to remember is kids are developing that emotional core and center too. So for them, and it's something that I found in my research and when we speak to parents, is children are not necessarily, they're learning how to identify what those emotions mean. So they don't have the same emotional literacy that some, not all adults have. But again, they really struggle to identify what that emotion might mean. So anger is a classic. So how many times have you heard a kid go, "Coach is really angry with me today. My parents are really angry with me today." They don't see that subtle discrepancy, and maybe they're not angry at you, they're just disappointed. Or they feel that they just haven't, it's not necessarily anger. So I think, happiness is great, but it's about helping them on that journey around identifying and helping them go with the emotions of where they're feeling, whilst their brain is also developing in the same way that their skeletons and their muscles are. So I think just asking them, how's it going? So in some of our development sports, we have a stoked score. So how stoked do you feel today? So that touches a little bit more on that kind of emotional mind, body, mood feel, rather than just where are you at physically today?
Right.
I think it almost goes to your presentation yesterday, actually, in terms of you almost like you bring that kind of happiness or wellness or readiness, however you want to call it, down to a number when you do these scales. And I think you lose that connection, which is what you were talking about yesterday, in terms of like that should never replace just go and speak to your athlete. How are you feeling today?
Yeah.
And you might volunteer something that's really relevant. I think emotion and psychology is so complex, you can't bring it down to one number. And that human interaction is so powerful as well. Yeah. Especially when you build those relationships with kids, especially like if you've got that relationship, they will volunteer stuff to you.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely something that I got wrong early on in my career. I was so focused on what's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? I neglected to be what matters to you. And that's how I try to lead now, that I've learned from all the mistakes that I've made early on in my career.
Even from a clinical aspect as well, I try and make a conscious effort. It's fairly recently to sort of kind of started doing this. Was I speak to a patient that's maybe injured, it's like, how are you? And they go, oh yeah, my knee's fine today. No. How are you? We'll get to the injury in a minute. How are you? I think that's certainly the long-term injuries, I think that's really important. It's like, how are they dealing with that psychology? You're not just dealing with that joint or that soft tissue, it's you're dealing with the person. And it can be quite difficult, again, going back to that identity. If you're not playing football, that's what they do. And if you can't do that anymore, that can have real connotations, especially in youth athletes who've maybe never been injured before. They don't know how to deal with it. And we've got to give them those skills as part of that rehab plan in terms of dealing with adversity, maybe, which is going to be really important for them through a career or even life. So yeah, I think having that connection with them and on a personal level, not just from an injury perspective, is really important.
Yeah, it sort of ties into the space of, again, sort of making the youth space more adult, but the tech piece of sort of like, you know, Oura rings or whatever watches you're wearing to tell you how you're feeling or tell you what your sleep was like or whatever, and we sort of lose the internal locus of control when we're dependent on technology. Like, well, kids come in and say like, my whatever band on my wrist is telling me I'm functioning at 45 today on a scale of 100. It's like, okay, but what about what you're telling yourself and what you're feeling? Like, there's validity in the human side, right? Okay.
Yeah, but also I think if you look at the technology, and don't get me wrong, technology is great. We definitely would be take us a lot longer to do things if we didn't have that. So much of the data and the parameters and the boundaries within that tech goes off adult. Nobody's contextualized it yet to phase of maturation or development, right? So I've had some really interesting conversations with parents recently around smartphones in schools and how old is it when your child gets their first mobile phone. And there's discussions in the UK now if we should just ban them till they're 16, they shouldn't have access to this. But if you think about sort of that child behaviour again and understanding risk, if you take something away from them and tell them they can't use it, it's their natural disposition. They want to seek it out more. You make it more attractive to them. So yeah, I think you're right with, again, them trying to understand the technology. So rather than restricting them from using it or those external cues that they're looking for, the data and the numbers, helping them internalize, but also teaching them, nobody's designed this technology for you yet. What do you think about that? Kids are fantastic at coming up with their own solutions to their own problems.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've experienced that a lot at Celtic. And
yeah, I think again, it's coming down to that number, isn't it? It's like, what does that number mean? It's like you hear about guys saying that I woke up this morning, felt brilliant, I had a great night's sleep, and then my Oura ring said I had a really bad sleep score, and then I felt terrible. And it's like, well, surely how you felt is more relevant and valid than what this is saying, because there's always going to be error within that measurement anyway. So I think it's almost, again, kind of repeat myself, it's education, isn't it? What does that number mean and how does it fit in? And with any tech that we use, whether that's GPS or jump scores and stuff, there's context behind that, and it's not, there's never one measure of this kind of feeling.
You would never take one measure in isolation.
I think that's key. And telling them what that means.
No, we could go on for hours and hours and hours. I know there's a big day ahead, and you guys have been very busy since you've been here. Joined by Gemma Parry and David Hartley. Appreciate your time. Just before you go, takeaways from being a part of World Congress WFAT. We're here in Ireland. Anything you've taken away from being here besides presenting all of the expertise that you have?
I think I've just really enjoyed seeing how global the profession is. Obviously having all these different nationalities here and seeing their perspectives and their challenges and what they're dealing with at home compared to us, and their solutions to stuff as well. I think that's been really exciting, and obviously just linking in with people around the world is nice, and hopefully build some relationships to tap into in the future.
Yeah, I think for me, look, there's a lot going on in the world right now for a lot of people in lots of different countries. And I think we're coming up against some really big problems globally that are impacting people's health, their quality of life, their human interaction with the world. But I think what's been lovely here is global problems require global solutions. And we've got a vehicle and an opportunity and a platform to do that here. And I think for me, that's been the really exciting thing. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how those international and global relationships start solving some of those big issues that we're coming up against. I really like that.
Unbelievable. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Enjoy the rest of the time, and to our audience, if we can, we'll include some contact information, some resources in the notes here for both David and Gemma. Truly, honestly, appreciate your time and love the work that you're doing. I will be in contact with you into the future for sure to continue this. But thank you for being here and enjoy the rest of the time.
Thanks so much,
you.
James.
Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT@firststartherapy.com. On Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.